For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined by Chris Treviño for instant analysis from USC's Tuesday morning practice of the Arizona week. Chris, what were your general thoughts from today's practice?
First thought is we're back. It's an official game week. It's not a bye week. They have a game at the end of the weekend, going to Arizona up into Tucson. And, I thought coming into this, I wanted to see what the mood of the team was like. They looked refocused. They looked a little bit refreshed. Even though last week, the bye week, they did not turn it down on physicality. A lot of players talked about how they were probably even more physical than they have been in spite of it being a bye week. A lot of tackling, a lot of those things. But the team looked refreshed. They looked refocused. And, I saw some plays being made against the scout offense, a couple fumbles forced by Shane Lee, Prophet Brown, cornerback. So the defense was getting after it. This is their kind of makeup game, after the Utah performance. So they're focused. They're trying to right the wrongs of that trip out to Utah, and they're trying to do it against a high-powered Arizona offense.
And Tuli Pelotu, defensive lineman, was asked after practice, and he said he was very surprised by just how energetic the Trojans were today after practice. Of course, coming off of a bye week against Arizona, some might think that the Trojans might be here on a Tuesday at 8 a.m., be a little bit down, but apparently they were very energetic. Did you notice the same thing from the Trojans today?
Yeah, just touching on what I mentioned earlier, a little bit deeper into that, they did seem like a new team, not a new team, but a team that, shook off what happened in Utah, use that bye week to get better, and then they're ready to get back out on the field. As we mentioned in past instances over the last couple of weeks, is that some of those guys really wanted to be back out on that field. They watched that tape, and some of them wanted to go back there and play 4 more quarters. So now they're going to get to play 4 quarters on Saturday. So I think a lot of that energy, specifically with the defenses, with them, trying to get back out there, trying to, get back some of that confidence, get back some of that momentum that they had built up going to that Utah game and kind of lost, halfway through that first half. They're trying to get back up there. They're going to have an opportunity because, as we know, this is a high-powered Arizona offense. They do turn the ball over a little bit with their quarterback, so it's going to be an opportunity for them and a chance for them to get back on the turnover train and, get some of that momentum back.
And a big piece where you need energy, you need commitment is tackling. Of course, we knew all of last week the Trojans were heavily emphasizing tackling after the Utah game, in which they saw their most missed tackles on the season. We got some comments about tackling today. What were your general thoughts about what the Trojans players had to say?
I talked to Max Williams, and I just asked him about it because we knew the bye week was very physical. They didn't tone down anything with their pads. They didn't go no pads at all last week in terms of what they're allowed to do. But I asked him how do you feel like the tackling went, and he said it's not that they did more tackling, they just put a bigger emphasis on tackling drills. Really wanted to get that out of the way and hit on that after you're coming off a bad performance up in Utah where they had a lot of missed tackles. He said a lot of the emphasis was just in the film room on tackling, hey, you got a guy in front of you, you got to make the tackle. You can't run off him and bounce off him and he goes for 18 yards. Dalton Kincaid still haunting their nightmares. But those are the things that they really hit on, and we're going to see what that looks like. I think we've talked about how this coaching staff has done a good job of something goes wrong in a game and that next game or that next opportunity, they're better. Look at, USC's offense in Oregon State versus how they performed in Utah. Completely different. So we're going to get the chance to see Alex Grinch's defensive staff, if that tackling emphasis, if that got through to them, how that played in the bye week, and if they're tackling on against Arizona, and I think we're going to see a much better defensive effort.
Yeah, Mekhi Blackman said something of the same realm. They didn't tackle any more, but they were really honed in on it, and he said you could tell players are taking it more seriously. They clearly want to go out and tackle. I think they were a little disappointed with their own performance against Utah. You talk about tackling, you got to talk about the linebackers, where the Trojans have struggled at different points this season. They've been dealing with some injuries. Lincoln Riley, who spoke today, was asked about the linebacker depth, and he had some good things to say about some backups to Acevio Nomura and even Rajon Davis. What did you think about what Lincoln had to say about the linebackers?
Yeah, it's just two guys we might see on Saturday. Especially if this is a blowout, you might see them get some more of those garbage time reps, or maybe some critical reps in the second half or first half even. So Tuaseve is the guy who's really come on with the USC fan base after that big third down tackle we made. Just one of the most physical guys on this team. And, Lincoln Riley was asked about Tuaseve. You can call him CV if you're on a first-name basis with him. But, he was talking about CV and how he was kind of digesting how to tell the story, but he was telling about how against Fresno State, Tuaseve was in and he came off and they discovered he had actually broken his finger, but not just a normal finger break, but a compound break where the bone is actually coming out. And he actually broke it on the field and stayed in for 3 plays, didn't tell anybody. So he played with a broken finger with a bone sticking out of his finger. that kind of toughness is just like legendary. That's like old school linebacker kind of tough. I stubbed my toe. I'm out for a week, Jack. This guy's breaking his fingers and going out there making tackles. And I witnessed that moment against the Fresno State. He came off the field. He only winced once. Like, they touched it and he like winced, and it wasn't even like that bad. I'd be crying on the field, but they took him off the field. And so that's some of the stuff that Tuasivi has played through and gone through. So that's a tough linebacker. And, fans have been calling for more playing time for Tuasivi, and I think we're going to start seeing it a little bit more. And he also complimented Rajon Davis as a guy who's really been developing. He's a fan favorite. Haven't seen much of him. He has that 4.4 speed, those coverage skills. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of number 9 out this weekend. But I think they should, give him some more run. And it sounds from Lincoln Riley that he is playing well in practice and developing well in practice.
Yeah, a couple more notes from the comments on those two players. He said not only did CV play a couple more plays, 2 of them he had tackles on the play. So he was tackling guys with a broken finger and a bone coming out. He also mentioned Rajon Davis on the cusp of getting some quality reps. He says a guy who's really on an upward trajectory. He kind of looking for some guys to stick out on the defense and work their way up the depth chart like Solomon Byrd did earlier in the year. He said that Rajon Davis is kind of one of those guys that's been working, and he's eventually going to get some big reps.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of this team in terms of, finding those guys who are performing in practice. Maybe they're the third string, maybe they're backups, whatever. If they're performing in practice, they're going to get those opportunities. Like you said with the Solomon Byrd, as a guy who has been, came on early when Romello Height went down and kind of played to that ability and, showed what he can do. And speaking of that position, Russia and Lincoln Riley did talk about how they're trying to still get more out of that Russian position. Nick Figueroa has still been playing at that spot, and he says they need to get more production out of that spot. Whether it's Solomon, Corey Foreman, or Nick Figueroa, they need someone to kind of step up and get quality sacks and tackles for a loss and pressures out of that spot. So that's going to be something to watch moving forward. But they're always looking for someone to step up. Doesn't matter if you're walk-on, 2-star, 3-star, whatever. If you're going to perform on Saturdays, you're going to play.
Yeah, one final note from Lincoln Riley and company today. They actually talked about the Arizona offense, where they've got a transfer quarterback from Washington State and Jaden DeLora. They've got some great wide receivers. So they're talking a little bit about how this offense can be very high-powered. Both Lincoln, Mekhi Blackman, even Max Williams, talking about the Arizona offense. What did you gather from what they had to say about the Wildcats?
Yeah, this will be probably the best wide receiver core USC has faced, this USC defense has faced this season, and we know why Arizona likes to throw the ball, because they got really good receivers, Jack. So, Jacob Cowing, who's he is the top receiver in the Pac-12 statistically. Dorian Singer has over 600 yards, and then T-Mac McMillan, a guy who USC was recruiting out of high school, a local kid, 6'5", just athleticism out of the gate, and a volleyball player, so he has that incredible leaping ability. He I think is going to give them some issues on Saturday, but if they figure out a way to corral at least a couple of those guys, they should be in well position to kind of hold them down. But very talented guys that can make plays. And, I've said before, I know USC's schedule isn't that much of a murderer's row going down the stretch with most of these teams having losing records at this point. But Arizona is a team with that quarterback, with that offense, with those receivers that can give USC some fits. And maybe we'll see a little bit of a shootout early. And it all goes down to those receivers, those talented pass catchers. So big opportunity for the defensive backs. This is a big game for them, a big game where they can, make some statements with some pass breakups, some shutdowns, some of these, strap them. So it's going to be a big game for them to step up and kind of play up to some really good wide receivers.
Yeah, Mekhi Blackman says they expect Arizona to throw the ball 50-plus times, which he said for the defensive backs, they throw it 50-plus times, that's a chance for us to make 50 plays, 50 chances for us to go out and make a play on the football. So obviously I think both sides are going to be excited, both the Arizona wide receivers, but also the Trojans defensive backs who get to go against a big group. They're coming off of a bye week 2, off of a loss. I think the Trojans are really going to try and ramp up for this Arizona game. Any more thoughts from you for today's practice, or we're going to head to tomorrow on Wednesday?
I think we're going to head into tomorrow. The only thing I did miss on is, it was a little chilly, Jack. We got the weather reports at the end of this one, but it was a little chilly this morning. Some staffers were not complaining, but we're like, man, it's cold out here. They're not used to it in Southern California. So that's me letting me know.
By chilly, I think Chris means a high of 77 today in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's
like 60 when I got here.
I don't know if it's too cold. Maybe you just got here earlier than I did. But practice supposed to be at 8:10. We ended up getting in about 8:30. It was a tiny bit chilly in the morning. I'll give you that. But also, you are wearing a sweatshirt and pants, so I don't know if it's too chilly. But that's all we've got for you guys today. For Chris Treviño, I'm Jack Smith. This has been USCFootball.com Instant Analysis. Make sure you're checking out the YouTube page and also the website for different articles, interviews from today's practice.